Yes.
Same
Debbie said she'd do the whole thing.
And then Dr. Gaddis, he's our ace in the hole.
He is that.
I'll be right there.
Her paperwork.
Just to kind of share where we are. This is our student progression plan. We've gone through a variety of processes, meeting with our elementary group, a middle school group, and a high school group as well. Then we did what we call a combined meeting, where after all three of those groups met, we then did kind of a once final look over of any changes or additions or modifications and sharing of the plan in May. At the time we were going through, we were watching the bill that we know had been passed, and I know Mr. Kennedy had referred to that earlier today. And you know, we were anticipating that it possibly could be signed or not be signed. At this point, for our presentation today, none of those changes from that are included in this, because we want to make sure when we did this, we weren't sure what was going to happen. You know, we weren't sure what the governor would choose or not choose to do, and we didn't want to have something out there that was incorrect or inadequate. So we are providing you today what we have, but I will tell you, we are going to come back to you in about a month with some updates from that bill that are going to impact our student progression plan. So what we're doing today, you need to make sure the eyes are on basically what we have determined based on some language changes and some things that we have noted. But the bill that is referenced, we're going to be bringing that back at a later date as well. And Mr. Rowland also wanted to let us know that with the there was another additional change.
Yeah, just with the Edgenuity contract that was recently approved, that was not written into the plan either, but it will be the next time we bring it. It'll just reflect that we have our own virtual school through Edgenuity, but we don't have that in both sections of this plan.
I know Mr. Bradshaw's gone, but so typically when we've had a lot of times we've just had one or two changes, and so we dealt with those through an addendum that was, just a temporary, year addendum, and then we do this because for those who are listening that they may or may not understand, it needs to be, a lot of times with the code of conduct, it's got to be published and so forth. Are we talking about coming back to us with a rewrite that includes all of those?
Yeah.
Because I would think there's kind of so in between.
The plan was today to share our changes that the committees that have reviewed it have recommended, and then we will come back with, here are the changes that are impacting the student progression plan based on that bill. And so we'll bring that back, and then we'll have the new document will be provided, and then we'll go through the process from there. So we're not going to do the advertisement that we normally would until we get to that point. So it may delay us in being able to bring a formal approval of it until a little later.
And then for board members, if you don't recall, it was about 3 or 4 years ago, we had a similar situation, and we actually ended up having to delay that year's pupil progression plan because there was it was just too complex to be able to get it all done.
Too many changes. We feel, though, we can come back to you with some additional changes, but we just thought it was cleaner than trying to muddy the water and not be able to accurately put the information in here in a timely manner. We wanted to provide ample time for us. We've been reviewing it, we've been reading it over multiple times, but we just want to make sure what we provide to you is clear and accurate. So what we have today is based on the information from the committee, and then what we bring back to you will be based on that information as well from the bill once we've had a chance to get that all together for you.
So when do you think we'll be approving the progression plan?
Well, again, we have to follow the procedure of once we bring you the next bit of information and add that, then we have to advertise that for a month and then from there. So I think our original plan was September. It may delay it to October. So that's, it's not going to be huge, but it'll probably be about a month delay.
Okay.
All right?
All right.
So, again, I don't feel there's a need to read every single bulleted item. I know you've had an opportunity to review it, but there were just a few things that I did want to lift out that we have made some changes, some wording changes based on some statute, based on some clarification of some of the pieces. So between Mr. Rowland and I, we're going to kind of go back and forth on some things that we feel relevant that we're going to ask you to look at. And I know the packet that you have lists the changes, and then list where they are as well in the plan, so we can refer you to those particular changes. So Mr. Rowland, I know you had some initially.
Starting with page 6 on the virtual options, it's also attachment A. We just added some clarifying language to our Citrus County virtual options, and this is a section that we're going to come back later and add the Edgenuity option from within our county. Basically, that was some clarifying language. On page 12, and I know this is sort of cumbersome to flip pages because I've been doing it for a while now, but if you look on page 12, for the dual enrollment section, we basically cleaned this up because WTC has some dual enrollment options and they weren't all in one place. You had to go to one area to find this and then go to another area. So we clarified. So the biggest change on this dual enrollment page in the fifth paragraph down, we talked about for qualifying for career and technical dual enrollment students. So we just added that piece so that, you know, as a parent, you can look in one place to find all the dual enrollment information that you need. Stuart, did you want to?
Yes.
Okay.
The next.
Okay.
So the next one is on page 15, which is the Florida Kindergarten Readiness Screener. And this is just so you know, they each year they have us do something called Flickers, which is the Florida Kindergarten Readiness Screener. And it's a different screener systems that they've used, and it basically rates how the pre-K programs operate. So it's basically using data from there, and then they connect that to how our pre-K students do. The state has purchased Start Early Literacy, which will be used for our Flickers information. So it's an online tool that the kindergarten teachers will have the students sit and go through the online tool, provide them some information, and then the state will use that information to determine it. Basically, it ranks how did the pre-K programs operate in the state of Florida. And it looks at all the pre-K programs because they have that information of where students went to pre-K. So just letting you know that there used to be a tool that the teachers did where the teachers did observations of students and then they marked, can the students do this, can the students do that. They've chosen to purchase this program from Renaissance Learning, which is Start Early Literacy, and that will be used for our kindergarten students. And it's just one time of the year, it's during the first month of school that they administer that particular test.
Can I just add, not for this, Scott, but one of the programs that I went to when we were over in Tampa was an Orange County presentation, and they're starting this as with 2-year-olds. And they've had some years of documentation to equate what they're doing on their testing all the way up through the 10th grade test. But they're starting these programs with 2-year-olds and seeing great success. So we're not going to talk about that yet because we don't have the money, but we might even consider adding that at a later date.
Definitely something to consider. Mrs. Kirby is going to come up and speak about the next one, which is the Florida Standards Alternate Assessment, which is attachment C.
Good afternoon. The Florida Standards Alternate Assessment, FSAA, is the test that we give to our students who are on access points or who have all of their coursework given through access points. And so it is this year coming up will be the 3rd year. We do now have cut scores that have been approved. And so we'll from this point forward be able to have that to be able to see how our students are progressing. There is also a data folio, and the data folio is a very time-intensive testing mechanism that allows teachers of our most significantly, students with most significant disabilities to be able to have an assessment. And so they basically enter information, it's almost like a portfolio, but they call it a data folio, of their progress. And so we had 2 students at Crest this year that worked with our Carl Amundsen to help use the data folio. And it's exciting to be able to have something to be able to share with parents that demonstrate how students have progressed, even for our most significant students. So those are just some of the updates and changes as far as FSAA goes. Anybody have any questions?
And most of these I'm going to go through. If you want to stop me and ask questions, please do so. But many of these are just, minor changes or clarifying changes. They just make it easier for someone to read and understand what's going on. The next one is on page 18, the chart for Algebra 1. And basically the scores, concordance scores and comparative scores have changed. They went from 489 back in 2015, and then as of 2016, it's 497. So that's just updated in that chart for concordant and comparative scores. Also on page 20, table 5, college readiness scores. We did not have the new SAT cut scores, and now we do, so that chart has been updated with the 24 listed in the new SAT chart. And now Ms. Kirby will speak about ESE diploma options.
One of the major changes that has taken place with changing of diploma options has to do with the doing away with the special diploma option for our students. And the intent is that all students will receive a standard diploma, and it can be by the 18 credit or the 24 credit method, but that all students can receive a standard diploma, even if it's through access points. We were not able to remove all special diploma language because we do have a few students that are over age or fifth year seniors that may still be out there. There are very, very few students left, so the special diploma option will be one that's minimized.
What about our CREST? Our CREST
And that
students?
may be where we still have a couple of students, but as you know, CREST students do graduate through their zone school, and they also are working towards a standard diploma
Very good.
as well.
Okay. So just in the elementary section, we, because of ESSA, we had to make some wording changes, removing the word highly from the second sentence there. And then also the FAIR FS, which was the assessment the state had offered, that's not used anymore, so that was removed. And then the portfolio, our third graders all participate in the portfolio option. And it was just the wording was confusing, but the change was the district must provide the student an opportunity to demonstrate successful performance and inform parents of the results from diagnostic assessments and progress monitoring. And
What page are we on?
it'd be page 43, the portfolio review for third grade. And as you know, we in Citrus County, and not, I don't know what other counties do, but I know in Citrus County, all of our third graders participate in a portfolio for promotion to the fourth grade. And so we provide them an opportunity to participate, and then parents are provided the information regarding that portfolio as we go through the year. So they take certain assessments throughout the year, parents provide that to help teachers use that information to kind of help drive their instruction in the classroom. So really it was nothing different that we've done. If you just look at the old student progression plan, it just was worded very confusing. So we just made some wording changes just to tighten it up and clean it up so it's a little cleaner.
Okay, we have a couple of changes at the middle school, so on page 55.
It's being looked at by Crown on a monthly basis.
On page 55, in relation to one course of career and educational planning to be completed in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade, we cleaned up the language, we changed some statutes there. I would not look at this section too carefully because this is going to be one of those affected by 7069. That's not going to be required any longer, but don't want to get ahead of ourselves. But when we rewrote this, it was mainly because some of the statutes had changed and we had to correct those. On page 56, high school courses taken by middle school students to meet graduation requirement. We just added a statement in order for a middle school student to get the high school credit, they have to pass that exam, and then we added the language, or retake or pass a concordant exam. So that was just an added change there to clarify that that's another option of meeting that high school requirement. And then as we get into the high school section, we have many changes. There's only a couple that are significant, but we'll go through each of those pretty quickly. I just want to say our high school committee did a great job. We caught things that have been in the plan for quite some time that needed to be updated, so just want to commend that committee for doing a really good job of looking things over very carefully. On page 62,
Can you, before you go there, on page 58, this still continues to come up on a regular basis. And it has to do with our grades, our percentages, our point values. Two things. The first question is, am I correct that some of this is also based in statute?
yes, the grading scale is based, the percentage scale is based in statute.
That's right, and that was my understanding. So, you know, we get on a regular basis, and I can tell you,
Yes,
for second-
For
yes.
secondary, yes, thank you.
right, just for secondary, because, you know, I've had a high schooler. I know, Mr. Rowland, you have a high schooler right now, and I have a child going into high school, and we get regularly because of the way, again, statute has set up where we must break out, if I recall, first semester, second semester grades and average those grades. I believe that's in statute now as well, is it not?
I believe so, yes.
So the argument is, well, they can get an A the first semester and they can just do nothing for the next semester and they can average that. Well, that's not a local decision. That is a statutorial decision that's been made by the way that they have to average the two. And if you add in there an EOC,
Right.
you even have another averaging. Now, I know enough of our kids, because we've gone to school together long enough to know that wouldn't fly at our house.
Right.
But it is the reality of what it is. There is certainly efforts that have said that that we as a district are deciding that and doing that and making it easy for students to not have to work hard. I haven't found that in my household. I haven't found that with most of my friends' kids either. But this is statute.
Right.
This is not a decision that we're making with regards to that. Part of statute is the point value, I thought, as well. Is the point value part of statute?
You're talking about the point value for an A, B, C, D?
Correct.
We have a little bit of control over that, and that's been adjusted slightly. I believe it was at high school 3 or 4 years ago, and then middle school the following year adjusted theirs a little bit as well.
And I'm a believer in the point value, mainly because we've had a workshop in the past that showed that, in fact, many grades around the country are assessments that go into point values because ABC does not tell you what you need to know, particularly when you're talking about D and F. And so regardless of whether they have failed it or not, at whatever level they failed it, they failed it.
Correct.
And if they only just passed, they only just passed. We've got a lot more work than whether they've got an A or a D, an A or a B. I bring this up because I really think that this conversation is going to continue as the political season heats up. And I think that it may be worth part of the future agenda to review and explain why this district's philosophy has been, which I agree with, by the way, having to do with the grading system, the percentages, and the point values, and why we are doing what I believe is in the best interest of our students. Because I think there is, again, conversation out there. I've seen it on social media. I see a group that's starting again this idea that we're not holding kids responsible for their grades. We're lax in that, and I don't believe that's the case. So I would be encouraged to say, I think at a future workshop, it would be worth reviewing that. I know we have some very significant data that has shown why we are doing what we're doing in our schools, and even at the elementary level, because there is a continual issue that says, well, we make everybody just get a 50%. No, if you failed we recognize you failed. Whether you failed at 30% or you failed at 50%, you still failed. And we're
on the-
interested in that.
And on the 4-point, on the, A, B, C, D, E, F scale, an F is a 0. So
Right.
you get nothing for having an F, so.
So I just think that's worth a
But
conversation.
I've shared with you years ago when I first started teaching, that was way back in the 60s when teachers could control their
Teach.
classrooms, they could teach.
Yeah.
I came up with a 15-point scale within my classroom. And so I graded every paper, every test on 15-point scale. I had, 15 points for an A plus, 14 for an A, and 13 for an A, all the way down to an F plus was 3 points, and an F was 2, and it was really kind of reflective of what the kids were really producing using a 15-point scale, but it never hit education, so,
And our teachers do a great job of, in my opinion, of
yeah.
accurately assessing students where their skills are and being fair with assigning grades and teaching to a mastery level, so.
We've all got some kids still in the classroom, me included, that were concerned about this 4.0, and then the kids would just sit because they don't have to do anything else because they're going to pass. And I don't know, at least in my daughter's classroom, it's not happening. The kids still they still want that reward for what they've done. So she doesn't see very many kids that are, I'm going to make an A the first 9 weeks, then I'm not going to do anything. They're just not coming to school to do nothing.
One of the things that I have a hard time explaining is this weighted grade point average and how we compare with other districts. I mean, I get a kid who's got a 5.0 grade point average. I haven't seen that yet, but I mean, I've seen some kids at 4.8. I read about some other districts at 4.8 or what.
4.8 here.
Where are we, can we make a 5.0? I mean, you know what I'm saying? I mean, when do we get...
They have 6.0s is what they do, is they weight it as a different...
Right, some other districts, right, some other districts have gone above 5, but, how do we fare? I mean, if we're comparing, apples to apples, we're trying to give our students the same opportunities as other districts, that's really not defined in this plan, right?
And the state, and I'm learning more each year, but the state has a rules, I don't know what the document you would call it, but Mr. Chamberlain's office operates under state rules, and then you have a course code directory, and within the course code directory, it tells you which courses are honors courses and which courses can be weighted, and then if there's any discretion on courses, it tells you that as well, so.
Do we have any say in how those courses are weighted?
Yes.
Well, there are certain things that are dictated to us. If they're listed with an H code and they have certain qualifiers, we have to weight them. So no, we don't. And then there are a few courses that when you get into the elective realm, they still have to reach certain criteria, but we do have some discretion over weighting some of those elective courses.
And we've been, and Ms. Stanley and I have had this conversation, and Mr. Rowland, we may have as well, that, Mr. Dodd, you're correct, because we have had surrounding counties that offer programs, for example, like CTEs that are getting drafting or getting a CNA or biomedical, and for example, Marion County will have weighted those, and we were not always weighting those. Now we've been going through, and Ms. Stanley has, Ms. Nobles before her, and making sure that we are in alignment, or because that certainly happened to be an issue that I had, that, well, if another district is weighting it, why aren't we weighting it? Because when kids apply for regional scholarships, it makes it look like our kids have less of a weighting. It also impacts that, for example, if your child goes to Lecanto, where IB has very defined weighting, but you have a child that goes to one of our other two schools where they may be taking more CTE courses, we want to make sure that those kids have those opportunities to have those equal weighting opportunities. So I do think it's a conversation, and we have latitude, I understand, with that. I want to say, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, the state, if it's a 5, if the course is a 5, there's a weighting that the state gives, and that determines whether it's an honors course or not, or whether it has honors level work.
Right.
That's usually what we have depended on to be the threshold, to say, well, if the state's recognizing the rigor of that course as being an honors, then we should be recognizing the rigor of that and weighting that course. And I think Ms. Stanley's been going through and monitoring some of those to make sure we are in alignment. I agree though, Mr. Dodd, I think it's worth continually to look at.
We have frequent conversation with Ms. Lopes and Ms. Newman. And it's a constant process to make sure that it's a level playing field and make sure that we're applying the same set of standards across our district as that others are doing. But it's with legislation changing, new courses being added, it's just a part of my job, part of Ms. Stanley's job, that we're constantly having those conversations and calling people, trying to figure it out, making sure that we're doing the right thing for our students.
And I think really, I don't know, I taught the pre-AP at the 10th grade level, which is weighted for Citrus County, but it was our understanding that most of the colleges are taking a look at our transcripts, and they're only picking out the AP classes or the IB classes. They would never take the weighted grade for my class because it was not part of the true AP program. So a lot of the kids are focused on the classes that they're taking, not necessarily their GPA anymore, because the colleges are redoing them to their specifications. So
They do, but
it's
now
not
the
that big.
colleges.
And we don't have valedictorians anymore, salutatorians, because we don't have that many decimal points anymore.
Well, the
So
colleges
I don't think
aren't
the kids are that
playing their own
concerned anymore
games.
about their GPA. They're worried about the courses that they're taking for the colleges that they want to get into.
I
disagree.
I would disagree completely with
I
that.
don't know, that,
Because
I mean,
Having, and Mr. Dodd and I have just been going
I
through
know, but
this.
I mean, I had a
It's not the case, because they're self-reporting their grades to the colleges. The transcript is an after-the-fact issue. Yes, there are colleges, I can tell you Georgia Tech, which my son was blessed to get into from this district, they will assign a different.
yeah.
But you go to UF, FSU, any of the traditional colleges, you're gonna self-report, and they'll ask which ones are the honors ones, they will make you add those up, and they will determine what that is. But here's the other issue that's going against. In our district, and compared into regions, our kids are applying for scholarships. These are not colleges that are looking at this. And so you go from school to school, from area to area, and these are not educated people that have an opportunity to know the difference between Citrus County's weightings and Hillsborough County's weightings, which they weight almost every high school course higher than a 4.0. So when your kid is applying and it says that they've got a 5.96 and your kid's got a 4.6, the appearance is that well, clearly they're not doing this well. They're thinking that they're like a 3.0 in our district. So it is an issue that plays in multiple areas, and our kids are losing scholarships that they could have opportunities to, unless they're looking at ACT and SAT scores, and then those particular applications will get a different look at. But the colleges are, they're playing their own games, because now the other issue that colleges are doing, and I don't know if Mr. God, you've seen this, but whether you're dual enrollment or anything else, they'll come in and say, that's great that you took dual enrollment, but you're going to spend 4 years here regardless. And you're going to pay for 4 years. It may be you can start off at level 2 instead of level 1, but we're still going to get 4 years of your money, because that's their model that they've suffered with.
That's why we've got the kids that get their AA into enrollment, and then the colleges don't have that option.
Actually, we just learned this year that a student that got an AA here was not able to get into a Florida school, university that they intended, because the university said they didn't have to accept them, because the state only had to allow them one university in Florida to go to because they got their AA degree. And that was one of our IB students.
Really?
Yep.
I haven't heard that.
Ask Mr. Bittner about it, because he was
I would like to.
has a very concern about the fact of our students that are getting their AAs, that it is limiting them, which is what Mr. Simon had shared with us, that there is an advantage to not finishing the AA right before, because it gives you more opportunities to get into colleges, that if you get the AA, you may be limited.
Because it's advertised, if you get your AA, you can go to any.
You're guaranteed into a Florida university.
Yeah, A for
One,
it.
he said it's one in the state, so you could live here and it would be.
They wanted to go to UF,
Panhandle.
and they assigned them FSU.
Yeah.
I'm sorry,
Which is a
USF,
good
not
idea.
FSU, USF.
Which is a good option.
There's nothing wrong with USF.
It certainly is not.
No, but it
So it
is.
was an upgrade.
Yeah, it was.
But no, when I read that too, I thought they could get into any college of their choice, but
Yeah.
it's a.
Any state.
No, and Mr. Bittner is the person, because it was his student, and he actually has some real concerns about us when it comes to the marketing of that because of that very issue. But I'm with Mr. God, though. I am concerned that our waiting, we need to continue to monitor. I know your departments are, but we want to make sure we're competitive.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that concern or those thoughts. I mean, we do it, but, it's just, we will continue to have those conversations, and before the school year starts, we will have a sit-down and probably a half-day meeting with Ms. Lopes, Mr. Chamberlain, Ms. Newman, and relook at everything that we're doing. But we're on the phone with them weekly about courses and GPAs and whatnot, so.
And it's a different world, it seems like, between the IB Lecanto worlds, which are a little bit more defined than some of the other options we have at the other high schools. And I think that's where those need to be looked at.
Mr. Rowland, we have a meeting on the 28th with Kathy Newman and Dave Van Dusen to discuss the CTE aspect in relation to the honors. So that is scheduled for later in the week. Just wanted you to know that's already on the agenda.
I know we had a statement made by a former legislator who said that he thought that a course taken, say like in mechanics, where you get the reading and that sort of stuff, was totally equal in stature to an AP course in English.
In an AP class.
Really, but that was a statement, so this one should, if it's weighted, it should be like a 3.8 or 4.1, and the other one, same thing, same way, and that is totally unfair to the students.
Yeah, I think most people will tell you that the career and technical manuals are written on a very high level of rigor, so.
And it depends on the
It's not
difference.
same. It's totally not the same.
Because, as we know, our CNA tests are, to me, even also they're on a higher level than, say, another manual that you're talking about. So that's why I think that it's important that we review. I found out that, that certain languages are not honors, have not been honors available, and other ones have. It's like, okay, you can get it in your junior year as an honors, but you can't get it in your senior year. Okay, how come? So yeah, I'm perplexed by some of that.
All right, if you guys want to move along, we'll go into page 62.
Yes.
Under termination of school placement at age 16, we just added one component that the parent-student meet with counselor as one extra step before they terminate
Very good.
high school. Now, this is the one of the bigger ones, special programs, Academy of Environmental Science. It outlines all those things that we talked about in our last meeting when we talked about the AES progression. 9th grade, they attend second semester, 10th grade, first semester, 11th, first or second, and that would be decided based on course availability between the base school and AES. And then ultimately seniors will not attend AES. But for the 17-18 school year, we've allowed tremendous flexibility to allow AES to be successful and get the numbers that they need. And once past this transition year, if everything is put into place like it's supposed to be, AES should be in a position to sustain itself with no problem as we go forward.
I only had one question when I was going through the contract for AES and then this. But we're doing most of the ELA test is going to be the second semester. So they will be rated as their base school student, not an AES student. So how I don't see AES getting any of those school grades that they used to get in the past.
No, they would not.
So they're going to be free from evaluation as far as state testing is concerned.
As far as a school grade, I mean, their teachers would still be operating under the
There was
same.
some language in the AES contract that referred to the school grade. And I don't know that we've given them the opportunity to get a school grade.
No, they would not, because you have to have students there both semesters.
Yeah.
This upcoming school year with some of the seniors, I'm not sure how that would affect on school grade, but after this year, there probably would not be any AES school grades unless something changed.
Okay, then I was reading it right.
Okay, on Page 63, micro school, no major changes there. We clarified some language. We had some language in there that talked about students not being able to go back to their zone school, and we really can't control that. So we took that language out. But again, just clarifying, nothing major has changed with micro school. On page 67, under credit acceleration program, students can take a AP course exam to collect the course. That means they don't have to take the course, they can just take the exam, but if a student wants to do that, they pay for that exam themselves.
And that's state statute too, is
Correct. Page 74 and 75, all this deals with career and technical education. We moved much of that content to page 12. And again, this was just a reorganization of the information. There were not any major changes, but we clarified the dual enrollment options through WTC and helped spell out that language a little bit.
Mr. Todd?
Yes,
On that page 68, on the except under special circumstances approved by the principal,
That's, thank you, Mr. Cohen.
Yes.
I think you skipped over that one, but could you just,
Yes, basically the principals, there's been a few instances where like a student has been out for major medical problems and just not performing very well, that there will be some rare instances that if a principal, after having a conversation with that parent and that student, felt like it was not in that child's best interest to take that exam, they wouldn't take it. But we're going to continue that all students in AP courses will take it, but if there's some rare exceptions, the principal could do that, but that would not likely happen very often. If it did, it would be probably something related to medical or a family trauma or something, a major incident in that child's life that it's just not best for them to sit for that exam because the principal may feel like they wouldn't do very well. But we're not getting into the practice of taking the AP course and not taking the exam. We're still pushing students to do that.
And, you know, I think it's fair to review because Citrus County has an open policy with taking AP courses. That is not necessarily the case throughout the nation. I don't know what the way it is in the rest of the part of the state, but I think that it's been an appropriate practice where if a student, you know, this goes back to the AVID philosophy, if we believe a student wants to push themselves, we want to encourage them to have that opportunity to take that course. We may, you know, have conversations with them, our guidance hopefully to explain to them what these opportunities and challenges may be. We're going to give them that open opportunity. And then if they're going to take the course, we expect to take the test. The data has shown us over the years that the students that get a 1 or a 2 on AP exams, while that may not be a passing grade to get college credit, we've found out that over 65% of those kids do not require later on taking remediated college courses because they've learned the rigor of taking college courses in our high schools, and they are more successful in our colleges. But I'm pleased that we added this language because we do have principals that are saying, listen, the kid hasn't shown up for half of the school year, and now we're going to make them take the test, we're going to pay for that test, and we know that they're going to get a 0 on that test. So we don't want them to necessarily be able to opt out on their own and do that, but we'd like to see a principal be able to have that, at least some control over making that decision. And I think that's just common sense.
Yep.
And then there's a lot of discussion from our teachers and whatnot about should all students have to test or not test. And Research and Accountability always shows that chart that shows that how much we've increased AP testing through the years, and our percentages have slightly gone up. So there's not a direct correlation that we have found that the more students that take it, the less success. We've actually seen that the more students that take it, the success mildly goes up. So we still believe that students who take an AP course should take the exam. Thanks for catching that. I didn't purposely skip over that. I just moved through. Again, page 74 and 75, we reorganized some of the career and technical information so that it reads more clearly. As a parent that reads through it, they can find the information, like putting the dual enrollment information together for career and technical. Page 71, dealing with cooperative CDE students. There was, in the middle of that first paragraph, cooperative diversified education, where it says students must have one job preparatory career. It used to say two, because of legislation statute, it is one. So that has been changed to one. And to match the language, credits, plural, was moved to credit. Page 73, and that's attachment H. Clarifying, just cleaned up the language. As we read through it as a committee, the information was disjointed and was, if you did not work in the school system, you would not be able to fully understand it. So we tried to simplify the language if a parent was reading through this, that they could understand that a little bit better. So there was no major content changes, just clarifying language and cleaning up the wording.
I'm encouraged that also on page 72 at the bottom there, the one credit for physical education, with the half credit being physical activity, that as a result, again, this is one of the few positive things in 7069, it will allow us to have competitive sports count as that now, along with marching band and JORTC and dance. So I know that'll be a change that'll need to go in there as well, but it's one that I'm certainly a big supporter of.
Yeah, that's the one you worked, you lobbied very hard to speak with our legislators to get that change, and it's a positive change for our students. Page 75, we removed the end of the sentence. If you look under grade point average for graduation, the sentence that starts, students must have a cumulative unweighted grade point average of 2.0 on a 4.0 scale. There used to be the language not replaced by grade forgiveness, and that statement has been removed. Page 79 talks about foreign exchange students. We just cleaned that language up. It used to say that students, and a foreign exchange student could not participate in graduation, which our people on the committee said, well, does that mean they can graduate, just not walk? And we're like, no. So we put in there they cannot graduate or participate in the graduation ceremony. Yes, there's a, okay, page 79. Under graduation participation, at the bottom of that section where students from Crest and Renaissance, it basically allows them to walk at their zone school, but we added language under extenuating circumstances, the principal may approve or deny students' participation in the zone school's graduation ceremony. And that was related, I do believe that was related to a student that ended up, that went to Renaissance, and they were trespassed from that campus. And even though they were going to graduate, because of the trespass, did not want them walking at graduation because, without going into a lot of detail, it was not in the best interest of everyone there that student that be there. So under that situation, this allows the principal to say, the student went to Renaissance, they're under expulsion, they've been trespassed, they're a danger to others, we're not going to allow them to walk at our graduation. But that allows that extenuating circumstance.
Consequences.
Page 80. This was okay, so it actually starts on 79 and rolls into 80 under awards and honors for standard diploma students. A lot of discussion about this one. It's in relation to the cum laude award system. Currently we have that in order to be summa cum laude, you have to have 3 credits of weighted courses with a C or higher, For cum laude, you must have 1 credit of weighted, and then under our regular cum laude, there is no requirement of any weighted or honors dual enrollment type courses. There was a discussion that we wanted there to make sure that this was a scholarly award, that those students that performed at the highest level were recognized, and many on the committee felt like the regular cum laude recognition should also have a weighted, at least 1 weighted course in that criteria as well. We did not, the committee did not feel like it would be fair to just do that this year without some advance notice for those students thinking that, oh, I'm going to get cum laude, and then find out last minute, no, I've got to take an honors course my senior year. We left those in place for this year, but as you see in the language, we're giving everybody advance notice. Beginning the 2018-19 school year, students will earn magna cum laude, 3.85 or higher, and at least 2 credits of weighted courses with a C or higher and do not meet the criteria for summa cum laude. Students will earn cum laude recognition if they have a 3.5 higher grade point average, at least 1 weighted course. So that was the change that will go into place for the 18-19 school year, but it's fair to all students looking for that recognition because it gives them time to achieve that if they are striving to do so.
Mr. Rowland, during the conversation, I know, and I concur with it, that some of this is because what Ms. Kirby was here earlier with is that we have kids that used to be special diploma and that may meet various requirements towards getting a general diploma now that would conceivably now fall into CUMA, the CUMA system. And I don't know that that was the intention, is I think some of the conversations that the teachers, the principals were saying that that was not really where, conceivably a lot of those students could end up, being CUMA, and they haven't taken any honors courses or anything to recognize that high rigor of that academic. And I tend to agree with that, and I think that the interim solution here was a good one, but it's to recognize this is a higher level. This is to say that students had to work and do something beyond just going to school and getting okay grades.
Yeah, and we had a lot of discussion, and I think we came to a good mutual agreement on where we landed. So I think it is a nice, fair solution. And Ms. Kirby has talked about those students that would like to be recognized in the cum laude category. They're capable of doing that, and with some support and whatnot. So I think it's a pretty fair solution. Sure.
Because any system is not about discluding and disqualifying people. We cannot look at it that way. But what we want to do is we want to make sure that we are recognizing hard work and effort. So we do have students who might have some classes that are at a lower level. Perhaps they excel in one class or one area, and they would have that opportunity to possibly take a weighted class in that one area. So I think that making sure that it's not recognizing that child who has a high GPA because they have all elective classes and not just not high enough academic classes, as well as all students that need to continue to be pushed towards a higher level. So I just want to make it real clear that this isn't about discluding anybody. This is about making sure that we're holding our standards high and that we're helping every child work towards achieving that standard. So.
Well said.
Okay, as we move forward, the gold and silver seal of biliteracy, no major changes in that area. Statute came through and clarified the requirements to reach those, and so we updated our language to match statute and state rules. On page 82, out of state high school diplomas, in the past we had Ed Options Academy listed, and as we continuously shop to get the best company and the best price, that changes. So instead of having a specific company, we put contracts with designated providers, so that allows us to change that as we need to. Because we won't be using Ed Options for this upcoming year. We'll be working through Edgenuity with that as well. And then on page 82, out-of-state high school diploma programs on the fourth line, it used to state Virginia because that's where the out-of-state diplomas came from. And again, as that changes, it will not be Virginia. On 82, also under interscholastic extracurricular eligibility, we added the statement under the second paragraph and third paragraph, unweighted cumulative GPA of 2.0 on a 4.0 scale, just to clarify that it is unweighted. Page 84. Talks about the Florida Bright Future Scholarship program, and we added the vocational options that qualify students for Florida Bright Futures under the Florida Gold Seal Vocational Scholar Award and the Florida Gold Seal Cape Scholars Award. So we just expanded that to include everyone that's covered under Florida Bright Futures. Under page 84, under grading procedures at the high school level, midterms, they're not going to do paper midterms, but we just wanted to include that in the language that these parents would have access to Skyward. If a parent would like a paper copy, they may request one and they can get paper copies. On page 85, in the middle of the page where it says note, so students participating in state tested EOC courses do not take 9-week finals or end of term tests. Because under our current system, the students would take an EOC, but they would also take the 9-week exams or 9-week tests that we have at the high school level. And after discussion, that would eliminate some testing for those students. And since they're taking an EOC, which is a final exam, the discussion was there's really no need to give a 9-week exam on top of a final exam. So that's exempting that.
But how are they going to make up? Is it just going to be 70% of their classwork and then 30% for their EOC?
EOC is 30% of the grade.
The little 20% for class exam is gone.
Well, those courses that do not have an EOC will still have an EOT, which will be 20% of their grade. On page 86, this was mainly for schools to understand, because is when students took credit recovery through Plato or through any other software program, each school was doing differently how they were putting an I or an F, or when did an I become an F. So we clarified the language basically for schools to understand the process for students taking those courses, when to give an I and when to give an F, and when to consider it credit recovery. And then the last thing on page 93 is that removes the Citrus County requirement for 1 credit in world geography. And that was all of our secondary changes. Any questions?
Well, I know we made the decision on world geography, a couple meetings back. How has that gone so far? I mean, everybody's pretty much happy with that. I know when you brought it to us, that was kind of the desire, but can you kind of expand on that a little bit for us?
I haven't heard a great deal of negative feedback on it. Our schools are still going to offer it. It's just not going to be a requirement for everyone. It allows that flexibility, and I think most people appreciated that flexibility, so students could take more courses of what they need if that was the case. But and it helped our level 1 and 2 students to give them the flexibility to take some of those remedial courses or get extra help. Like in our high schools, we're going to do those skinny courses, and that's going to help students that are level 1 and 2 be more organized and more prepared for high school. And by not having the world geography, allowed more of that flexibility for those level 1 and 2 students. But
so that's being worked on to offer those skinny courses. I mean, kind of, we're working to make that a reality.
That is the last update from all 3 high schools. That is going to happen. It's in the schedule, and it's going to work. And And I know our schools, at least a couple that I've talked to recently who went to Avid, are very excited about that option, and they think they're going to help more kids with that skinny program.
And we worked through the scheduling. I know there was a question about in the system how that was going to work, but I take it that's been all.
Yes, we've had a couple meetings with Mr. Chamlin's office with the schools, and that part has been worked out. I mean, there are some challenges anytime you do something different, but it's going to work.
Okay, great.
Right.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Blocker.
Yes, ma'am.
Budget.
Now the fun begins.
Well, good morning. I just wondered, it takes one guy to present the budget, but three to present the people progression. Not a lot of changes in this work, in this presentation from the previous one I gave you. I just got some updates. Of course, you know some of the things that happened in Tallahassee. Just to kind of give you a little background, the legislature did approve the budget May 5th, and that FEFP for us netted us $60,000 more in that original FEFP, which we were all not very happy with. I know a lot of y'all did a lot of phone calls, lobbying, whatnot to please ask the governor to veto it. And he did hear the message. He did veto it, called back the legislature for a special session to come back and work to increase that FEFP. His demand was an extra $100. And of course, there was probably some horse trading going on back and forth to get to that level. And we were kind of talking yesterday, Mr. Mullen and I, and thinking, okay, so what's the price we're going to pay next year due to that horse trading that went on? And, so on June 5th, the legislature did pass the amended FEFP, House Bill 3A, that it did include additional funding for school districts, including us, which the increase was $1.1 million for next school year as opposed to $60,000. So some of those highlights is the base student allocation increased by $43.24. Total funds per FTE increased by $49.24. The required local millage decreased by to 4.339. So that revenue decreased by $724,000. The discretionary local effort revenue increased because that millage rate stays the same at 0.74, increased by $332,000, and the state funding increased by about $1.5 million. So those are some of the highlights of what happened during that special session that came back to give us some extra money. And here's the run that kind of compares the fourth calc to the original final conference report to the final conference report, the amended FEFP, the House Bill 3A. And you can see some of the slight differences there. Specifically on that base student allocation, the original was at $4,133.64 a child, and it went up to $4,203.95. So that's extra $43.24. Which did impact the base funding. It went up by $704,000. So that is the majority of where we saw the increase between that and the millage compression of $134,000. Those are the big highlights of the increase in the FEFP for us to increase it to that $1.1 million.
Mr. Blocker,
Yes.
when they say it was $100, where are they coming up with that? Are they just taking all the funding?
They're looking at everything. See, for us, it was only $49.
I was just going to say, because it's,
That's a state average.
okay.
Unfortunately, we were on the lower.
Call it $100.
We were on the lower part of
Let's
that.
call it what it is.
Well, exactly. That's why we pointed out we were getting less money per student on the original run.
Right.
But they were telling everybody how much they gave, and we just had to be on the lower end. So we're getting like half of what they proposed.
So who got our half? Who got more than $1?
I don't know, but I'm gonna go find.
I want you to find out. I want to know who they are.
Is it because of special funding they may have in their district?
Well, it's just the way the whole thing shakes out with, we get compression, someone else doesn't get compression, we get sparsity, someone else gets those. If you throw the whole thing in the hopper and do the average of all the students, that's what it comes out.
Okay.
Yeah. But our class size relatively stayed the same. School recognition Dr. Guess was asking me this morning about digital classroom, $734,205 was the same allocation, which I think in that House bill, there are some changes in how that allocation works, which I don't think you got to do a plan anymore, correct, Dr. Geddes?
Haven't heard the details, but
I
I
think-
think from 11 pages, I think that was paragraph.
Yeah, I think it basically.
It provided us more flexibility. It didn't tie us
Right.
to assessments, which was
Mhm.
my biggest issue with the digital dollars, so I think that allows us. We last year, Dr. Geddes and his team came up with a great plan that mitigated us through last year, but now I think in a year when we need it, we should have the flexibility to do better what we need to do with it.
So the total funding now is $106,593, or $7,079 per unweighted FTE. So that's what we're looking at. Now, we are looking at our student counts. Mr. Bowen alluded to earlier that we're going to review that tomorrow, and looking at the student counts compared to the teacher allocations. So these numbers that the budget is based on, we may be seeing some differences when the October count comes.
And that may result in us shifting some staff. So we may have hired a new teacher thinking they were going to be needed at IPS, for example, and then they may be shifted to Pleasant Grove. So we'll spend some time down trying to balance that out, because we just got the students rolled forward in Skyward last weekend. So the zoning that you all approved, how that's going to be impacted.
It's an ever-evolving process.
Yeah.
Working through. I mean, we're working up through it through the first month of school.
If you watch that enrollment
Yeah.
they put out, it's changing every week.
School
So-
choice, I know we didn't have a ton of school choice, but we do have some school choice. Is that settled as far as yet those decisions, and so that we have staffing?
Yeah, I mean, they'll still, our
Trickle.
zones will still trickle in, but pretty much I think we have a good handle on where those are at.
Okay.
Wasn't.
I think Citrus Springs was really probably middle was the biggest.
And I haven't
Wasn't a great
seen-
deal of requests for parents to stay in their home school with the zoning there.
Yeah. If they're going to go to the high school, that's for a lot of them, that's the follow the middle school.
So for us, I mean, if we look at the big picture, we're getting 1.132 million more, but yet the local funding, we're paying, the local is paying less.
Correct. Because remember, that's been the big issue from the legislature. The House side, Corcoran has indicated that if you did not go back to the rollback rate, anything other than that was a tax increase. So for us, for the last 2 years they've done this to us, we've actually lost a couple $1 million worth of revenue. That if you compound that over a couple of years, that starts adding up, that we keep losing every year. Until they change that that stature, how they want to operate, we're not gonna get any extra revenue.
And so the risk next year is if they don't give us as much from POTS, from the FEFP, and then we're already down on our
Right.
local revenue. Yeah.
I mean, great for the local property taxpayers.
Right.
I mean, they're paying less in property taxes because their millage rate essentially is held in check.
Oh, right.
You know, or the revenue.
But that's only for education.
Yes.
That doesn't mean that that's what the commissioners decide to do.
Correct.
Because they don't follow the same.
You're correct.
rules.
And, there's that bill out there about or it's going to go, I guess, to the voters about the additional exemption, which thankfully we're exempt from.
Well, that doesn't apply to us, that's right.
That's right, we're exempt from it, thankfully, because if not, that would certainly be detrimental to us. And the counties and the cities are going to face a true hardship on that. And thankfully, with this charter school that on the House Bill 7069, as far as sharing capital outlay, we're very fortunate that it looks like we don't have to do that, because AES does not award diplomas, nor are they accredited through southern states. And micro school leases our property. So I talked to someone this morning, they have about 30 charter schools. They're going to be hugely devastated in their capital outlay, and they're already leveraging all their bond payments, so they have some real issues. That's why they had to go for sales tax, that's why they got huge impact fees coming in, they're having to use all this stuff.
Mr. Blocker, though, if you looked at your trim notices over the last number of years, though, educational dollar-wise, though, they have continued, I believe, to, if you just looked at the educational dollars, they've continued to dwindle, which is what we've talked about of whether it's capital or what the legislature has done. They've continued to, whether it's a rollback or not, they've continued to reduce that local required effort. All while other entities, taxing authorities, may have increased or maintained. Because it's all looked at as one bill, we haven't gotten credit in the community to say, listen, you've been paying less taxes for schools for years, both on capital and on general. And this is why we continue to, when they say, well, you guys need to work within your means, we have been. But you keep changing the means lower and lower and lower on us, and we keep cutting and cutting and cutting to continue to do that. We don't get credit for it.
We do too good of a job with that, I think.
Well,
sometimes, I think.
But we don't have a choice. We have to balance it at the end of the day. But I say that because, again, it is frustrating when they'll look at their tax bill and say, well, they haven't seen any tax savings. It has been. You haven't looked at it close enough.
Right.
You look at the educational side, it's been a reduction every year.
So, I know we got started on the local taxpayer, but the state continues to not allow us to use those increases in property value to increase dollars going to the local schools. And it has been detrimental, and it continues to be detrimental. I think we were having this conversation yesterday. 10 years ago, we were thinking, all right, we'll get through this hurdle, we'll get over it. We finally got it, and now we're going to start seeing some increases. I think this is status quo. I think we've got to change our paradigm in how we do business, because this is it. That we shouldn't expect anything different, unfortunately, unless we put a charter behind our name or something.
Now, the one question in here that I didn't have, and I'm still not entirely clear on, did the charter still get the PICO dollars?
Yes.
Because I was under the impression they still did at the previous year's formula, which was about $300 a student compared to our $30 a student.
Well, I saw the total allocation. They got, I forget, it was 50-50. I forget if it was 50 million us, 50 million them, but I didn't read the details.
And they have 10% of the students.
Right.
So they got 50% of the money for 10% of the students. The other 90% got the other 50%, and when you work it out, I think it works out to about $300 a student on the charter side to $30 on ours. So again, I know we're not talking necessarily all of Citrus County in this case, but throughout the state, not only are those districts now having to share that 1.5, but they're also still getting a haircut on the PICO. And they've been saying, oh, well, the reason we had to fund the PICO is because you weren't participating in the 1.5. Well, if they had taken that away and equitably made, shared that completely on a per pupil basis, the way they always want to say they want to follow the dollars, they didn't do it with PICO dollars.
Good point. So we know FRS went up. Once again, we're looking at about $370,000 when we ran the last run. Contractual steps that we're obligated to pay. So these are obligations that we have no control over. We have to certainly mitigate through the budget process. The health insurance board match, I think I went over that with you last time. Now we got to pay for the full year, that increased match. Staffing reductions we have looked at, try to mitigate some of that. We're going to be looking at some more tomorrow as far as enrollments and staff, and see if there's any changes we can do there to help and mitigate some of the increases. We did look at this House bill, and ironically, the Title I changes actually kind of worked a little bit in our favor this time. I know it was good for a lot of the school districts with the charter schools, but it kind of worked in our favor, to where we looked at how we could use this change to actually help offset some of the needs we have in the general fund. And Title I was actually able to pick up approximately $400,000 in staff charges that they now can, because they had to push out all this money to the schools from the district, so we actually took advantage of, when we pushed that out, to allocate some of that cost to the personnel to relieve the general fund. So it kind of worked in our favor this time. Next year will be a different story, because we do know, I think it rolls out to the high schools next year, so we'll have some,
Two high schools qualify.
we'll have to have some conversation how we work through that. But this year, for this particular time, we did get it to work into our advantage. We also did push out some extra personnel to food service. The staff that work in the cafeteria during lunchtime, breakfast time, we're able to now cost those out to food service. That'll save us about $275. So we were looking at all kinds of ways on how to relieve the general fund, mitigate those expenses, and push them off to a different fund. And it's
Let me say something about the Title I. When we say the high schools will qualify, a lot of people think, well, that's great, we're gonna get more money. We don't get more money. We just spread the money thinner. So you still get the same pot of money, it just means the elementary will get less money, and some of it now will go to high schools. So we don't get more money than that, right?
And we believed that early intervention and those early programs have been successful at then the high school level. In addition, high schools have, and believe me, we all are scrapping for dollars, but high schools have additional revenue sources.
You get their AP dollars.
I was going to say, they have AP dollars, they even have sometimes some athletic dollars. There are other aspects that are covering Title I areas that now they'll have funding for, and I know that's going to be a serious conversation as the months roll forward, is, we're not supposed to supplant, but on the other hand, they're kind of forcing us to then say, well, we will no longer fund, and you'll have to use areas like Title I, and then we're not going to be able to do that at the district level. So I know there's some creativity that's going to have to take place here in order to minimize the impact, but it's going to have an impact.
Yeah, I mean, the high schools have, the AP dollars and the IB dollars and all the dollars are coming in.
Yeah.
What does elementary have?
They get theoretically, they've always got the Title I, that's
it.
always, yeah.
It will negatively impact elementary.
Because Mr. Mellon's right, there's one pot, and if you keep adding more hands, it just gets thinner and thinner.
And we don't know too on the private side, because the private schools share in those dollars.
Yes.
So now they're going to increase, and I'm not saying it's a significant number, but it is a number.
All of them are offered Title I dollars, and they have to accept it. And of course, there's always, there's hitches and there's things they have to do to qualify to get that money. So some do take it, and some don't take it. But every year they're asked, so more could join.
But that's going to be, I think, the big policy question moving forward is whether it's one of our schools, which we still have, because they're going to ultimately report to the superintendent still, or another school, the autonomy of what that school decides they want to use those Title I dollars for, that may be even more of an issue for us. In the past, we had a little bit of a stick. But if they want to now start taking professional development and sending their teachers to college, which they could conceivably try to justify to do, which is not the intent,
Right.
but it may meet the letter of the law, there's not a lot we can do about it, or very little. The superintendent then at least has some authority over that, the personnel to be able to hopefully say, this is what our expectation is for you, and we're going to allocate it to your school, is what I'm assuming we're going to probably have to make those decisions. But we're going to have even less control moving forward. And that's really the ultimate issue I have, is that, again, this board that is elected and is supposed to have the authority to watch for those dollars is now going to have all the responsibility but no stick to be able to address when there's inappropriate spending that's done.
Well, that'll be even more the responsibility of the superintendent, right, to watch those dollars at the school, high school level.
But even if she says we're not going to do it, I feel they can appeal to get those dollars, and I'm not sure there's a lot that this district can do other than to go on the record and say we don't agree with it.
Once again, it's just.
We can be
You got your back on it too.
Public education is getting knocked down another rung, and it's going out to everybody else. So, like I say, sometimes I think we do too good of a job because we always make it work. And I think some days we may have to just say we can't do it anymore.
I don't know how many indictments, though, that we're going to need of charter school leaders before this stops.
So,
Get on
What was all the dollars?
a lot of the data and the graphs are all the same as what we had before. I just wanted to roll to to essentially this sheet here. This is the one that I know we all kind of look at. So the yellow column, the last one to your right, FY 2018. So what we've rolled in with the new amended FEFP and all the changes we made, we're at a deficit of 289,000, just call it 300,000 for approximation. So now our goal is to start working through additional issues. Remember, it was $1 million when I showed it to you last time, so we got some extra money, but we worked through some other expenses, and so we've been working through it. So we're down to $300,000. So our goal now is when we bring back the tentative budget to you on July 27th, I think, whatever that date is, it'll be balanced. And that's the goal, that we always bring to you a balanced budget at the tentative budget hearing. So between now and then, that number will be zero. Conversely, if you look at the column prior to that, what we project out for this year, we look like we're going to be hopefully having a surplus of a little over $1 million, about 1.4. For ending fund balance about 10.4 million. Then when you add your reserves in, you come down to an undesignated fund balance about 6.5 million.
Mr. Blocker, the undesignated fund balance percentage there at the proposed of 5.56, which from your mouth to the good Lord's ears, because that would be great to take place, and I know Ms. Bryant will sleep better at night. Is that include, though, the $1 million in self-insurance as a part of that?
No.
Okay.
And I can do a quick calculation to make sure, but I don't.
No,
It should not.
I just,
It
that's
should
that was
include the
just-
3.8 and the 175.
That's what I thought.
Yeah. It should not include that $1 million, but like I say,
I didn't think so, but I wanted to just make
it's
sure.
not supposed to. I didn't
It's
go
the
through.
25th of July.
Yes, ma'am, thank you.
County.
So that's where we're at now. I'm saying there's, I don't think, it's gonna get worse. The funding's gonna get worse or not any better, so we've got to start preparing again and start looking at the fund balance. And I was joking yesterday, I don't think I'll get it back up to that 18 million I had at one time, but we certainly need to start looking at the fund balance and start to prepare for the next upcoming years, because I don't think the funding's gonna get any better at all.
And God forbid we have to bond something, we need to have our bond rating.
This is one of the key factors they look at.
And at the superintendent's meeting the other day, Jim Hamilton, isn't it?
Yes.
And he goes around and does a lot of workshops on budgets and things like that, and he said that school districts just need to realize that when leadership says there's no new taxes, there will be no new taxes. And he said that he was recommending all superintendents and school boards that they really need to build up their fund balance, because he said that he hopes he's wrong, and he'd like to be wrong in this area, but he believes that in the next several years, things will get worse and worse. And he's always recommended to have 6 months of payroll in your fund balance, which most school districts don't. But he said that we need to be really careful about that, which we have been, but I'm sure you all probably heard the same thing in some of your meetings and while you were down there. So it's not going to change and get any different as long as leadership's like it is.
Well, his leadership is lacking.
So that's where we're at. When we come back next time, it will be balanced for the tentative budget, but I just want to show you where we're at. We're still working through some things. We do make another personnel HR run in about 2 or 3 weeks, so that'll clean up the majority of everything else we got hanging out there, and it should come out balanced. That's my goal.
Superintendent, are you going to be meeting soon with editorial board? I wondered if Mr. Blocker.
It's canceled tomorrow, but we will be looking at it.
Okay, because I'm thinking that these are numbers that they take a while to understand and process. And again, what happens is we look like, oh, see, they're doing fine. The sausage making gets missed, and really what is getting taken out to do it.
And this is just kind of the chart that shows the distribution of expenses. Once again, salary and benefits are our biggest expense, about 81%. So typically, to make any inroads into reductions, that's where it comes from. Any questions about that? The capital, no real changes to the capital other than the roll forward of the fund balance, what we're estimating. If we look, all the projects are the same as what I showed you last time. We do look to be a little bit healthier. As we go out 5 years out, we would have right now about an $8 million fund balance. Now, this does not include all those nice projects we want to do, the Floral Cities, the IPSs, the IMSs. At some point in time, I do want to come back to you and kind of present to you maybe some options. I know going out into the market is not one of your keen ideas, but I think if there's something that we can look at that potentially could help us in that arena to remodel those schools and make them better sites, that may be some options. I'd like to just present them to you and give you some insight and just say, these are options if we did want to go back out and look at how we could do an additional bond or some type of, interest, loan to accomplish that task. How would it impact this? And is it worth it?
I think we have to explore those
I'd like to
things.
do that.
And I think, again, we may or may not, be able to take that, but we also are going to have some decisions to make about just maintaining some of those facilities, and we're going to have costs one way or the other.
Sure.
So we need to at least explore those so that we're doing our due diligence.
So next board meeting is the July 9th board meeting. You'll be asked to approve do the advertising, right, like we do all the time. The advertisement will be in the Chronicle. Is it July 22nd, I believe, or the Saturday is before the tentative budget. That's when the advertisements will run in the Chronicle, and then on the 25th is when we'll do the tentative budget. Now, I just plan on updating the PowerPoint for the tentative budget. My opinion, you tell me, but I don't really think it's a need to print a big book or anything. I think
No.
a PowerPoint would be sufficient.
Yes.
Of course, the final budget's when we do the big book for you and everything, that is kind of our guide for the year. But is that okay with everybody?
Yes.
Yeah, and when you do get to the book, you can just send me mine on file.
Right, okay. Any questions?
Well, our bond payment on Christopher High School goes through what, 2027?
It was 16, 20, it's 26 or 27, I can't remember the exact one, but it was
It's 27.
27, okay.
Page 28 on mine.
There you go, yes, April 2027.
And so you're just, the options you're talking about, obviously we still have needs,
Well, we keep
Full
talking
city,
about these
Riverside.
needs, these unfunded projects that we've had. I just think, just to have conversation, just to present it and show you, are these anything you want to look at? How's it going to impact the capital fund? Because Mr. Bishop has made a lot of changes after last year that you can see it's impacting the bottom line of the capital fund, which is, raising the fund balance, which is what we wanted to do. But we still have all these unmet needs. So is it worth an exercise just to present to you, and I don't mean tomorrow or the next month, but 4 or 5 months from now, to look at, if we went on the capital market to look at some of these projects, is it worthwhile and how's it going to impact? And I think it's just worth the conversation.
Well, those first three in particular, we know, have such a symbiotic relationship to this entire side of the county. Particularly, Pleasant Grove is dramatically impacted by those first two schools. The Floral City and Inverness Primary. We can't do what we need to alleviate Pleasant Grove unless we've done something to Floral City, and we can't really do the right things at Inverness Primary until we address Floral City. And that's not even addressing the serious issues we have at Inverness Middle School. So,
I think it's
I'm not saying Crystal River High doesn't need something, but those first three, to me, are very essential
They're the
issues
priority.
that we've got
Yes, they
to
are.
address.
Yeah, I would like to look at some
Yeah.
options. I hate to leverage future, but it's something we need to look at.
We need to at least know what we're talking about. It doesn't mean we go forward on it, it doesn't mean we don't, but we need to at least
We can
know
have
the
a
information
conversation.
and just kicking the can.
Right, and I'm talking about an in-house type proposal. Not something that we're gonna go outside for.
Well, you would have to go outside if you did a.
I think he means
Well,
spending, I think he means doing the reports.
Oh, no, I'll do it.
Yeah,
I'll
yeah,
do it.
yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah, we gotta go outside for the bond. There's no doubt in
Yeah.
that.
No, I'll do it for you. I'll leverage people that I know to give me information.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah, not to hire a consultant to.
I'll just use some generalities with these numbers here and just present some ideas that way and how it would impact the general fund, the capital fund. maybe
That'd be
about
great.
10 years or something like
That
that.
would be great.
But I would do all that for you.
And I think explaining that would be very helpful to the public, because I noticed in the paper today, someone wrote a letter about a park that Frank DiGiovanni is planning, and they were saying, a park? Why are you planning a park? You know, it's very pretty, but aren't there other things? And they mentioned roads and Citrus Springs. So when the public hears why we're saying that these things are needed, they should hear what they're needed for, and not, you know, like a new TV station at Everett's Middle School or something real.
Okay. Any other questions or anything? So we'll come back to you, the tentative budget balanced, and we'll approve it then. All the advertisers will be there, we'll do the whole script and all the resolutions.
All right, thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Appreciate it.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, do we have any other topics that need to come before this board? We're adjourned.
No,
she did it earlier.